So the New York Times, according to the New York Times, is suing OpenAI for copy infringement. And their argument, even though obviously biased by the article being written by themselves, is making the argument that they have a really strong case. Now, this is not the first lawsuit against OpenAI, and there's been a lot of conversation around citing resources and where they're pulling data in order to curate an answer to a question that you may have on ChatGPT. But we also have some older lawsuits dating all the way back to 2021 from the lawsuit by authors that happened early in 2021 and the lawsuit by the US, which included some authors, some pretty renowned authors, including some with even Pulitzer Prizes. So this isn't a conversation that's going to be going away, and I want to help you unpack the implications of such a lawsuit, what the likely scenarios will be going into the future, and how this is going to affect the AI industry as a whole. But before we jump right in, make sure to take a chance to hit that like and subscribe button. It means a ton to me. It allows me to keep doing this type of content and keep you updated on topics just like this. Now, I want to talk to you first about the argument that the New York Times is making that this is infringing on copyright material. Now, we all know that OpenAI, included with their plugins, can now go out and just search the World Wide Web. And if it's searchable, if you can pull the content down, it's something it can pull from and give you a response. Now, some of these responses are being seen as something that is taking proprietary information or confidential or copywritten data and translating it into answers and text and maybe even things that are making companies profit that otherwise wouldn't. However, I would like to make the argument that like a human being, if someone were to go and read, let's say, even on this topic, the topic of the New York Times suing OpenAI, let's say I wanted to go out and make my own YouTube video around what's actually happening. Well, I would likely go and read a bunch of articles, read a bunch of opinions, and then from that, curate my own answer and create my own video script and my own video, just like this one that we're doing right now and you're listening to. And I would argue, like, what is the difference? Like, what is the difference between me doing that and a technology doing that? Now, there are some differences, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate here on both sides. And one of the major differences is a human knows the difference between something that is copywritten and not, meaning actually taking full sentences, copying it word for word, and then translating it into a new form, a new text, and claiming it as my own would be a copyright infringement. OpenAI does that sometimes, but does it unknowing and, more importantly, without citation. So it can pull context, for example, from an interview done by the New York Times in this example, and then try to curate it or put it into some type of position of a question that you asked it without saying, actually, the New York Times author who wrote this article said this quote, and that's where my idea is coming from to give you that answer. Now, if you come up with your own answer as an accumulative form of research, like something you went out and did research on multiple places, or just read the article, but you came up with your own way of saying it, that is not copyright infringement. However, I believe that this is not just a copyright attack. The New York Times, along with a lot of other publication companies, and this would include like all types of newspapers, all type of media outlets, are really in the crosshairs when it comes to information distribution. And this is not new to the industry, and this war is not uncommon. And let me give you some examples of these scenarios playing out from the past. Now, when we went from television to internet, or when we went from radio to television, there was a massive shift in the dynamics around how we could get the news out and how we used the news to make money, how we monetized it. And that's really the backbone behind all of this. None of the news, none of the media you get or hear from doesn't have some type of monetization, meaning they're making money somehow in order to keep the gears on this thing going, right? They've got to pay for anchors, they have to pay for journalists, they have to pay for their ways to get the information out on the World Wide Web, maybe their own websites, it may be still on television a little bit, definitely through anchors and certain partner program. But the OpenAI-AI dilemma that's happening is, will AI replace our news? And probably a more likely scenario, will AI curate the news specifically tailored to your needs? How often do we get on the internet, or we get on, especially when it was TV and radio, and we were just bombarded and blasted with data and information about the world and the news around the world that frankly we didn't care about? It's like something's going on in Canada, and it's like, that doesn't touch me with a 10-foot pole. That doesn't impact my finances. That doesn't affect my family, my politics, nothing. But it was good clickbait, and maybe something over there was really risque was happening, and they knew they could grab your attention. Well, the potential of AI, the potential of AI news is specifically curated to your needs, your interests, and frankly, the things that actually land home for you, rather than it being something that we see often with news. We see often with the power constructs of these networks. There's much more that goes on, and especially when it comes to the world of politics, where there's a lot of anchoring and there's a lot of omissions and submissions that really benefit the network based on a political agenda or a political outlook. Naturally tied often to who's paying for the network to stay alive, the sponsors, the people paying for the commercials, the sponsored by XYZ, and I won't go into the detail who those people are, but it's just the mechanics that keeps things going. So the New York Times definitely feels threatened by AI, specifically the giant in the room, which is OpenAI, and I find it peculiar that they're not attacking all the other LLMs. Like, there are 50 plus other major used LLMs out there right now. You could say there's a top 5 that are all tied to the big 7. And it's like, why are we not attacking these LLMs? Why did we specifically attack OpenAI? And I think it has to do with, there's a common sentiment in the US and around the world that OpenAI is leading the pack right now, that they may be 6 months to a year ahead of any of the LLM's progress. They definitely have the user base, and they are rolling out tools that really creates a tie to the user, meaning there's an investment, like these GPT models that just came out create a massive tie to the user, meaning if you're going to build something on it, you're going to want to stay there. And so there's no question that they're attacking the big guys, but I don't know if the argument is sound that we can come after them for copyright infringement. Now, is it okay to take an image or a design and completely copy it and remodel it inside of another image? No. Like, we have certain characters, certain designs, like Disney owns a bunch of different types of themes and characters that would definitely be an infringement on their trademarks and their copyrights. Does it mean you can't make something in the likeness? No, absolutely can. Does it mean you can't do a self-drawing or something for your own personal means? Yes, could. But to monetize it would cross a boundary for sure. And so as this lawsuit pursues, and as we start to see the results from this could be a major tether. This could be a ball and chain for the progress of AI. And I really think the public needs to weigh in on. We need to weigh in on whether or not we're okay with this, because this is kind of the conservative versus the progressive. And when I say that, I'm saying it not in a political way, but the conservative way of doing the news is fighting the progressive way of doing the news, which is through AI. And they probably never saw themselves being put in this position. But frankly speaking, old networks, these legacy, I guess we could even say that, like legacy sounds old. These legacy networks are very conservative when you think about it in nature. Maybe not politically, but conservative, meaning they're trying to hold on to their old values. They're trying to hold on to their old ways of making money. They're trying to hold on to the old ways of distributing and giving, well, same thing, distributing and receiving information, like how we receive it. And AI has definitely got these old legacy networks in their crosshairs because it may replace and change the game. Now, I use this model, what I call the Napster effect, as a working model of how we're going to get through this. When Napster came out, like similar to the news networks, the music industry was pretty much untouched. How we bought music, it was typically by the album, not the song. We would go, in its last phases, we'd buy these discs. right? With all of the songs from our favorite album. Or before that, we would buy vinyl or we'd buy cassette. But generally speaking, the monetization of the music industry didn't change up until Napster. And once there was a technology shift around how we could get music without having a physical copy, and the way we could redistribute it became much easier, there had to be a shift in the way that they charged. And even though you could make a copy of a CD, even though you can make a copy of a disc, there was enough work there that they had their monetization structure in place and it was sound enough to still work. When Napster came out and made music free, this peer-to-peer sharing, they were definitely crossing a line. And we could say we could have the same argument we're having now that we did then, that they really weren't breaking any laws. However, did the big players come to bat and did things change because of it? Absolutely. Napster got shut down. Peer-to-peer sharing websites across the world got shut down. Are there still places you can go out and do that? Absolutely. But the way they fixed it is they changed the way it was monetized. And so if I were to predict how the money is going to flow, which is really what we're interested in here at the Market Pulse show and Market Pulse podcast that I do on Friday, is we're interested in the monetization. We're interested in the money flow of events. And what will likely happen is how we distribute news and what we value around news is going to have to shift. And frankly, I'm looking forward to that because a lot of the news we get is actually clickbait sensitive, meaning we're buying headlines. The way that they're monetizing us as the consumer is a strong headline for potential advertisers and click-throughs and leads and certain connections to affiliate marketers. That's how they make their money. And so if we are no longer the product or innocent bystanders of heavy clickbait, the way that news is going to have to get monetized will shift. And I actually think it's better for humanity because the way that we currently do it is kind of gross. It's kind of it's disturbing. It's enticing and inciting fear. And for the most part, I would say from a psychological place is not healthy for the average human, especially when we start getting on certain feeds through like social media where we're watching reels and shorts on like TikTok or Instagram, where this stuff is just thrown up on us in 15 to 60 second increments. And all we're getting is the headlines, and we're having energetic movements inside of our body where that lizard brain, that fight or flight part of our brain is triggered, and we're just getting emotionally hyped up over nothing. And if we could curate that, which I think is what's coming, after the lawsuits, after the dust settles, at the end of the day, whether the New York Times wins this lawsuit or not, it's a lose for them either way. They're going to have to learn to shift. This would be like Blockbuster trying to sue Netflix because of how they're distributing information, how they're distributing the same line of videos or movies. Did they try doing certain things like that? Kind of. Blockbuster was actually a bad example. They were pretty slow around the block. But is it going to get wiped out and changed? Absolutely. Is it something I'm looking forward to? Absolutely. Are there going to be financial implications? Absolutely. So Microsoft tied to OpenAI, there's going to be some implications there. I would watch the other LLMs also, like, obviously out of the big seven, your Googles, X is coming out with theirs. It's going to be pretty popular. You've got Llama. You've got a bunch. There's just a ton. There's a ton of these LLMs out there. If you're invested or interested in investing in some type of AI project that is LLM based, the type that's going to proper citation or the type that's going to have a lot of criticism, maybe the boxes checked, I would be looking for those specific type of AI companies because there is going to be some headwind. And the tide in the AI industry is going to go out a little bit as these lawsuits pile up, costs of having to pay for them, time and energy to have to defend them and figure out what's right, what's wrong. That's all about to happen. And so there are going to be some financial plays, could be towards the short side. One of the main cautions that I would give people is most AI has been priced to perfection. And what that means is priced to a future value that's perfect with no flaws, no lawsuit, no issues. And this is clearly an issue. This, in a price to perfection model in the AI industry, this is an issue. And this I would say is a chink in the chain that I would be looking at to revalue my investments in AI and potentially look for new ones that may be emerging that solve this problem and or are you're taking a short position in some of them. So that really wraps up my thoughts on this New York Times suing OpenAI. I don't like it. I wish we could avoid these things completely, but this is part of argumentative battle that we have to kind of settle terms. Otherwise, these people who are running AI companies might get a God complex, or a very strong narcissist belief that they're unstoppable, and we might end up with some really bad results without these checks and balances. So grateful for that. Not so grateful for like the lack or the slowing down in progress, but I know that this will work out. There are multiple examples in history that this worked out for the better around humanity. And wouldn't it be a blessing if we stopped getting fake news? Wouldn't it be this incredible evolution to stop being fed clickbait just because our brains are triggered by fear and by greed and by apathy and worry? Wouldn't it be amazing if we started getting fed the things we needed, the things that are applicable, so that we could build a greater society? All right, well, that wraps up my time on the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI. Again, guys, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you have any comments or things you'd like to add to this, throw it in the comments section below. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys have to say. Thanks.